Well, welcome. It's Charlyn Jean here, and I'm so happy that you clicked to connect with me. And today I want to talk with you about my message, which is to help people transform their life by the renewing of their mind, and specifically about the agreements in our life. You know, the agreements that we make with ourselves, the agreements that we make with other people, and how we go out into the world and we operate with those agreements. And it's interesting because agreements are either going to cause an energy gain in our life and we're going to get really energized and step into that power, or it's going to be an energy drain because they're broken or they're broke down or they're misunderstood, and then we are just exhausted. Energy is an interesting thing because there is no new energy being created. We're just harnessing the power of it continuously. It's already all here. So the message today is, how are we going to tap into what's already there and really create a life that's transforming for us? And I know this very personally because I have had lots of times in my life where my relationships with myself or other people, I wasn't energized by that because I wasn't keeping my agreements. So first, let's really talk about being impeccable with your word. This is talked about in most consciousness training for people. It's also talked about in the wonderful book, The Four Agreements, where you can really study that a bit more as well. But to be impeccable with your word really means to be in truth and at a highest standard. And so it would be using the word in your life for you and not against you, like to cause any harm. And so when we talk about being impeccable with your word, it's really, how are you showing up? So I want to ask you a question when we're talking about agreements with ourselves, because some agreements we've made with ourselves are known and some are unknown. So really heightening our awareness and our awakening to what are some of the agreements that we have with ourselves. Some of it is the way that we just happen to talk to ourselves. Like, let's challenge this for a minute. The way that your brain runs and the messages that you're kind of subconsciously and consciously just muttering, are those the kind of messages that you would use with a best friend? You know, like, I know for women, a lot of my messages in the past were, oh my God, your butt looks huge in those jeans, or you're just not ready. You don't have what it takes right now, or whatever the negative messaging is that's keeping you from really the base belief, which is, I'm not enough, or being vulnerable and really showing who you are. And so instead of doing those things because of all that messaging, we tend to hide, withdraw, retreat, withhold, and really lie because we're afraid of showing up as our authentic self. You know, I love this little gift that someone gave me. This is me. And I just want to encourage you today to start to get in touch with you. So the messaging that's there. So is it the way that you would talk to a best friend? You know, if you were the baby, how do you think you'd treat you? Like, if you have a little baby, you're just like, oh, you're so cute. Oh my gosh, you're so incredible. You're really loving on that child. So I want to encourage you to begin to pay attention to the messages and the agreements that you've had with yourself of how you're going to treat yourself. That's an agreement. And you can renegotiate agreements. There's all kinds of things you can do with them. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But you can also break up with some agreements that you've had and said, that just doesn't fit in my life anymore. And so I'm excited for you to be able to start the awareness of this chapter of the agreements that you've made with yourself. And as you're doing that, maybe think about reprogramming the talk that you've had. How would you talk to yourself as a kindergartner? You know, if I could go back in time to Charlyn Jean as a little 5-year-old in kindergarten, I would be telling her how incredible she is, how everything is possible, how there's infinite power and possibility in every cell of her being. And to not listen if someone tells her that she can't do something or there's something wrong with her, because that's really just a message that they believe. That's a story that they have. So let's kind of come into that awareness of, how are you talking to yourself? Would you talk to a best friend that way? And just think about, you know, I've got this little necklace here. It says Mom. My daughter got it for me. But I've been thinking about buying myself a BFF necklace that I would wear around. Like, my own best friend forever, talking to myself in that way as a reminder to catch those little messages and the agreement of how I've spoken to myself for maybe so long. So there's that piece. Now, while we're still on here today, because I wanted to stay with you for a few more minutes, I want to just visit with you about the agreements in our life that we've made with others. And what happens when we break the agreement that we have made without actually consciously coming forward and being honest and vulnerable about, you know, I need to change this or I need to renegotiate it. we just break them and we don't take responsibility for that, we lose confidence with ourselves. We are out of integrity. And integrity is like a fiber in fabric. And the higher the integrity of fabric, the stronger it is. And so when you keep your word, your confidence, your self-image is so much higher and you show up in the world so much better. All right, so let's talk about kind of 4 areas, well, actually 5, that you can kind of start to practice in your life. Now, I think that we often know what to do in our life, but I don't think we know what to do with our agreements because I know I didn't. It had never occurred to me, some of these thoughts. So let's get started. Number 1 is to first become aware of the agreements that you have made. Okay, and that's a promise, a commitment, where you said, I will do something. Now, when we're talking about the ones with ourselves, they're not very conscious, but you can start to catch them and go, I'm not in agreement with that anymore with myself. I'm not going to agree with that. I'm not going to allow you to talk like you to you like that anymore. So that's an awareness there. Now, second thing I would say to do is you want to really, with other people, get really definitely clear on what is the agreement. You know, in legal contracts, it's all spelled out, but in life, it's not. Like if you're working with a group of people, it's, you know, I'm making my commitment, I will do this part or a project, or even at home. The other day, my husband and I were selling our house and they said, we're going to come see it really soon. And I said, babe, we got to clean up this house. Like they're coming in like 2 hours. Let's make a list and then let's agree of who's going to do what. So that's a definite, clear agreement. Number 2 is you want to then keep your agreements. And that would be like, as much as possible, you do what you committed to, because that's going to build confidence with yourself, and that's going to change the way that you show up in the world. Now, watch yourself here. Do you overcommit? Do you overextend because you're seeking people's approval? When you have that approval within you, which comes from what I started this with, your self-talk, you're going to show up totally differently in the world. You're not going to say yes to everything because you don't need everyone to approve of you because you already feel good about yourself. So that will help you in all departments, is changing that self-image. So keep your agreements as much as possible, and people will come to know that you know that you're dependable, that you're a person of your word, you're impeccable with your word. And what's really interesting about this is, more importantly, you'll know. And so again, you will approve of yourself in that higher way. All right, third step is sometimes we need to renegotiate our agreements and say, you know, I said yes to this, but I'm seeing now that either I'm overextended or my travel schedules have changed or whatever it is. You know what? It never even occurred to me that I could renegotiate something. If I said I would, it felt to me like I had to, no matter what. And so that sense of responsibility didn't always serve me well, because sometimes I was sacrificing something more important just to keep my word. We have the power of renegotiation to go back and say, I need to renegotiate this because it's not working for me in this realm now, as my life is ever changing and evolving. So really harness the power of renegotiation and start to explore, what would that look like for you? It's just using your verbal skills and showing up honestly. It's being honest, not withholding, not withdrawing, not retreating, and not hiding, but coming out and being honest. And there's some real power in that. And last but least would be to take responsibility, the most important thing. I love that in the work that I do, we take responsibility for ourselves. You know, when we go through something and we have to break an agreement or something happens, it's so important to go back and say, I am so sorry that, like, if you miss an appointment, even if you're late to get somewhere, instead of making an excuse and covering that up, again, hiding, be open, be clear, be in that moment and take responsibility for yourself and say, I dropped the ball. People love when you are honest. They have so much more trust and confidence in you. And again, you have trust and confidence with yourself. And that's where the magic happens. So I hope this has helped you today, that as you're thinking about how can you show up in the world with the agreements that you make with yourself and others, it's going to be a game changer. And instead of going from energy drain in your life, you can go to energy gain and become more of that highest version of yourself, as we all are evolving with our consciousness through life. I want to leave you with a thought. You know, I am known to be a very positive person. And there was times in my life when that was kind of like, I wasn't willing to look at what was going on in my life. I don't want to say, when I'm talking about this little quote I'm going to share, being positive in that way of disconnected. But I'm talking about that our thoughts in our life really become our feelings. And, and those become our words and things that we're saying. If you want to see what's inside someone's heart, pay attention to what they're saying, because the words of our heart will overflow out of our mouth. So thoughts become feelings and words, and that turns into actions. What we say is really powerful. And that's the actions that we take in our life, against ourselves or for ourselves, against others or for others. That's where we live, and that creates the results in your life. So we'll be talking on other videos about changing your results, because you can trace it right back to the head domino, which is your thoughts. But this is the thought that I want to leave you with, is I think positive thoughts. I love to speak over myself and others. I think positive thoughts because every cell within my body responds to every thought that I think and every word that I speak. Guys, that's going to be what shows up in your life, because your attention goes where your energy flows. So I hope today, this Click and Connect time with me, Charlyn Jean, has been great for you. It's been great for me. The more that I can pour out truth and power and love into the world, the more that it reflects back to me. And remember, your life experiences, as hard as it is to realize sometimes, are reflecting what you're sending out. What you transmit, you receive back. So if you want some different results, we'll be talking about that soon. Have a great day, and thanks so much.